Yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Music and Technology Seminar at Carnegie Mellon. Welcome back and all the best for the new year. Our guest today is Evelyn Davenport, who recently completed her master's degree in piano performance and is the founder and chief technology officer of PianoCam, an innovative way to teach piano remotely. For any budding entrepreneurs in our audience today, she will tell us about the grants she has gotten and a workspace on campus to house her PianoCam setup. I would encourage all of our audience today to ask questions about PianoCam and especially about navigating the challenges and assistance of getting a business plan together at Carnegie Mellon. Please welcome Evelyn Davenport to the Music and Technology Seminar.
Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to be talking about PianoCam. And this is my startup / research project that I've been working on full-time for the last 3-ish years since I've been at CMU. So we're going to go over what is PianoCam, and then what's the need of something like this for musicians. I'm also going to go over how its design has changed pretty much semester to semester, and then how to use it in research applications and also my future plans with it. So what is PianoCam? It's a hybrid piano and audiovisual recording system, and it's designed for virtual performance and education. Virtual performance is just like on Zoom, like here. And it's designed for musicians with zero tech experience, and it requires no setup time or dedicated software outside of Zoom to use. So to start, oh, and then the other thing is that my goal with PianoCam is that musical communication is inherently unique, especially with the piano being such a large instrument physically, and so our technology should facilitate this communication, not inhibit it. So to start, I have a quick demo video.
Attention all piano teachers. Has this happened to you?
All right, can you try playing something?
Yes.
Oh,
Introducing PianoCam, the all-in-one audio-visual recording system for piano instruction. PianoCam uses sleek cameras and microphones to provide the best angle and sound every time. PianoCam is attached to the piano, so no need for flimsy stands and long setup times. Just plug in your computer and you're ready to play. Want to see it in action?
Wow.
yeah. And that's directly taken from a Zoom meeting with like no post-processing. Okay, so just a quick timeline of like how this came to be. So I'm originally from Canada, and I came to the US for the first time to do my master's in piano performance here at CMU. So when I first came, I was like totally just in the classical music performance realm. I had an interest in music technology, but I was by no means uh, thinking entrepreneurially. And so in my first semester in fall 2023, I took a business of music class just as like an elective, where I first came up with PianoCam just for the class. And then I realized like, oh, actually, I really like not only working on this, but I see the potential in how I think it could help um, facilitate virtual communication. Because as we'll see that there are some pretty inherent problems with uh, musical performances online. And then in that year, I also did the McGinnis Venture Competition. This is one of the opportunities through the Tepper School of Business that if you have a startup idea, um, that you can compete for funding. And so I did that twice, and last year I was a semifinalist using PianoCam. Like Ricardo mentioned, I'm a part of Project Olympus, and if you don't know what that is, That's also a program run through the Tepper School of Business, specifically through the Schwartz Center for Entrepreneurship. And so anybody from CMU can join, whether they've graduated, they're still a student, faculty, as long as you have some sort of affiliation and you have an idea that you'd like to explore, they'll help you figure out a path to commercialization. And so one of their programs is the Customer Discovery Program. And I did this program in the winter of 2025, so last year. And it was a really helpful program from going from, oh, I just have this idea. I don't really know if it's like feasible or not, to actually figuring out what a customer base would be interested, not only in purchasing, but in the problem that needs to be solved. I also took a music and engineering class here within the College of Fine Arts, and that's where I was able to conduct some user testing and refine my prototype. And I also took a lot of Ideate classes. So if you don't know what Ideate is, it's kind of like a inter-department college area at CMU hosted within the Hunt Library. And it allows you to take any kind of class that combines art and technology. And so I was able to get a lot of technical skills in prototyping and 3D printing through Ideate. Specifically, the funding that I got, and this was mostly in that winter semester, so about a year ago. As a grad student, I received the scholarly project funding, and then I received 2 grants through Tepper Project Olympus. And so that included the Gebhardt Sandbox Fund and a Spark grant. And those I was eligible for because of my affiliation with Project Olympus. And then they also granted me an office, like Ricardo mentioned, so that I could build the units and also do some testing. And so now I'm fully selling units. I have 3 testing centers on and off campus, and I'm expanding to work and collaborate with Canadian universities, departments like Hines and HCI. And then I've also been doing some legal work with Pitt, where they're helping me to patent and copyright elements of PianoCam. So it's been really rewarding to work on it the last 3 years and have it turn into a full-time venture. So first off, why is this a thing? So in order to answer that question, we need to understand, what does a pianist look like? I'm sure if you haven't played piano, then you know somebody that's played piano. And it is one of the most prevalent instruments just globally. And there are 18 million players in the US. All ages and backgrounds can enjoy learning piano, and it's used in a variety of styles. The other thing is that keyboard skills are necessary for other instrumentalists, especially string players. At least in Canada, where I'm from, they're encouraged to learn piano and have keyboard skills to supplement their general musical learning. So piano has a really important place in the general kind of music paradigm of today. Now it comes to, how do we teach piano? Piano lessons are usually one-on-one, and up until recently, they were only in person. So you had to physically go to your teacher's house. COVID kind of forced us to have to navigate online Zoom lessons or using Skype or Google Meets. And we realized that musicians are not audiovisual engineers at all. This is not something that we learn or that becomes intuitive to us through the art of learning the piano. And the other thing is that the piano is a huge instrument. A grand piano can be up to 9 feet tall or long. A tall one would be bad. And so a simple laptop or phone recording is really insufficient for capturing a full body performance of the hands and the feet and capturing sound from the strings. And so higher quality setups are difficult, time consuming, and expensive. And when something goes wrong, pianists, especially if you're in a lesson, don't have the time to be able to really sit down and debug what's going on. So personally, I also experienced this during COVID. The sound and visual clarity that I had just taken for granted by showing up to school was completely gone, and now I was dependent on individual resources And I didn't really have that much of a setup. I only had my laptop that I was turning towards, and this actually led to a shoulder injury that I had for quite a long time because of Zoom lessons. And so I needed to find a solution that worked better with my body and also made me sound better on the instrument. And you might be thinking, wow, that was just like a COVID thing. Um, but virtual performance is only increasing as we become more digitally connected. And I actually auditioned for CMU on Zoom. And this is what my setup looked like. It kind of looks like a tornado went through. And no, this was just me trying to sound treat the room as best as I could with not that much knowledge behind me, because the room had lots of windows and like no padding or insulation. So I was using towels and pillows and anything to try and make it sound better. And it did work. It pretty significantly increased my audio quality, but at what cost? This took like 3 days to put up. Nobody else can use the room, and you'd need a lot of patience to have to put this up long term for online lessons. And so this is where I wanted to design a solution that met these problems in a safe and also engaging way for musicians. So when I've designed PianoCam, I've wanted it to be accessible. So this is to any pianist and also to their instrument. And so PianoCam can be installed on grand pianos, keyboards, and then even like basically toy MIDI controllers. I wanted it to be Zoom compatible. This is the software that's most widely used among musicians, mainly because we learned how to during COVID. Skype also completely disconnected last year, so that's not an option anymore. And Google Meets doesn't really have the audio settings that are needed for musical interaction. So Zoom right now is kind of the safest option. So I made sure that it was compatible with that. And I also wanted it to be time effective while also being high quality. So there's no setup required because PianoCam is permanently attached to the piano, and it still provides high quality audio and video to mimic in-person communication where you can see the entire performer. And I also wanted it to be discreet, where it doesn't distract the user with a bunch of like wearable technology or it damages the instrument. So in October 2023, in that business class, I had some early schematics where I had 5 cameras to kind of capture every single part of the performance. And then also microphones built into the piano and then one outside of the piano. And so these were just like preliminary ideas. But not. Oh, and then I also wanted to have, speaking to the ergonomics of things, a swivel screen that would come around so that it could be stored away if you weren't using it, but otherwise it would place the teacher view in a similar way that it would mimic the angle that you would be turning to if your teacher was actually there in person. And then the biggest thing is that I wanted just a single wire output to your connected device that would go to Zoom. And this would help if somebody had a basic laptop or an iPad, keep the accessibility of PianoCam up. So my first prototype was later that fall. This is the one that you saw in the Zoom demo, or in the like initial demo video. And so it used a combination of like laptop webcams and then also USB webcams. And even though I got it working in Zoom to show all 3 views, it needed a secondary software called OBS, which stands for Open Broadcast Software. And this is not an intuitive software to use at all. It's usually used for live streaming into YouTube. But this was the only way that I could get 3 simultaneous views to go live into Zoom. So it improved the playing audio, but you also couldn't hear anybody speak because there was only one microphone. And the biggest limitations were that the hardware was just loosely like taped to the piano, which isn't practical at all. And it took about an hour to set up. And then I only had access to that prototype for about like 3 days, and then I had to return it to the library because at this point I didn't have any funding. And so the video that you see here is of a PianoCam that only existed for a few hours. So then a lot of time passed before I was able to make my second prototype, and this was mainly due to funding. Because a PianoCam right now costs about between $2,000 and $3,000 to assemble. And I knew once I had that funding that I would be able to improve on my last prototype, but it did take some time to find the right scholarships and grants to apply for. So the difference in this diagram is that all of the video, which are in HDMI, orange cables, and all of the audio, which are just in XLR cables, go into a single device called a video switcher. And a video switcher is it's a pre-existing device that's typically used for live stream of like live events. So think church services or small scale concerts. But a video switcher would allow me to put all of the video and all of the audio into one output, which unlike my first prototype, these were separate interfaces. So you might be wondering, well, what did I do to improve the like hardware that I was using now that I have this video switcher? So the second PianoCam uses these IDA HDMI box cameras, and they're about like the size of your palm. And these are super handy cameras because they use like a 1/4-inch screw-in mount, which are much more feasible for creating a stable contact point with the piano. And you'll see examples of that later on. I also use an AMT piano microphone. This microphone is maybe about the size of my finger, so it's only like a few inches long. And you can see it in the bottom right here. It actually velcros into the inside of the piano. And even though it's a close mic, I find that it provides a really accurate sound to what the piano sounds like. And then the star of the show is this Roland video switcher. So this is that control panel that allows for the video and the audio to come in. And then you can also use these buttons that are in the white here to be able to create the grid view. And so the biggest difference between these two prototypes is that while the first one needed software to create the simultaneous kind of panels, this one is completely hardware based. And so none of the settings are actually configured on the connecting device to Zoom. But how was I going to attach these to the piano? And this is where there wasn't really a market solution that was discrete enough to not impede on the performer, but would also not damage the instrument long term. And so this is where through Ideate here at school, I was able to design and 3D print my own clamps that would attach to the piano. And so these early prototypes just used like zip ties, but they've actually been very effective, and they're still in use in some of the models around school today. The problem with these, even though they could stand up vertically or horizontally, is that they were only measured to the instrument, and pianos have there really isn't a consistent frame that's designed. And so where this clamp might fit on one piano, it won't fit on another in like the next practice room. And so my second iteration was a bit more involved. So these are still 3D printed. But what I did was I measured a bunch of pianos like everywhere over school, and I found that about 18 centimeters would accurately be able to like latch on to any piano. And these are fully adjustable right down to if you had something like that big that you wanted to clamp. And so they use a handle, and then they also use these ball joint mount slots. And so what these do is they allow, as you can see on the right here, for a single clamp to hold multiple cameras. And so this saves a lot more space if you're working with like a basic keyboard like I have here. This is actually taken from my Project Olympus office, and it allows for a lot more stability because they're all on kind of the same plane. And it also allows for extendable arms to be swapped out and in. And so you can really adjust the camera views as you need. I also needed to make a holder for this video switcher. And so also through ID8, I was able to laser cut a custom kind of container for the control panel that I wanted to sit right underneath the piano. And so this would allow for easy access while you were sitting at the piano bench. And so this picture on the right is taken as if I was sitting at the piano bench. And then there's this drawbridge mechanism that very loosely uses strings to hold it up, but it's still been working. And then the user is able to slide that in and out to access the controls. And so it means that all of these wires are able to actually be hidden underneath the piano and not get in the way of just the general performance space. And so this is what PianoCam 2.0 turned out to be. This is split over two pictures, but generally you can see that you have a wide camera, the pedal camera, and the key camera combined with a self-view monitor so that you can see all three views. And then the control panel and microphones are placed behind the piano. This is another PianoCam model. I know this picture looks a little busy, but it's generally the same thing. So you have a self-view monitor, and then the speaking and piano microphones are placed in the piano. You also have your tri-camera view, so you have the wide angle. At number 2 here, you have the keys, and then below the piano, you have the pedal. And then there's the control panel, and most importantly, there's a single USB-C connection. So this is my iPad actually connected to PianoCam, showing what it's demonstrating in the Zoom meeting. And so it really helped with kind of the universal plug and play aspect of it, that somebody could just plug in their device and it would automatically pop up in Zoom because all of the processing is being done by the control panel to create this grid view and also make sure the audio is clear. And so this is what that unit is able to make in Zoom. So this is me playing, just as a screenshot, but you can see the pedal view, the key, and the wide. And so this was a much cleaner setup than trying to use software. Using my clamps, I was also able to add an extendable arm so that I was able to do an overhead view if somebody wanted to switch to that. And what's nice is that the roll-in video switcher allows you to preset different camera angles. And so I was able to switch in between this like vertical grid to a horizontal one in like under 10 seconds. The limitations with this, though, are that it's easy for the user to turn on, but you really need training for setting adjustment because that video switcher has a lot of features that aren't really applicable to music instruction. And so it's very easy for people to get confused by like all of the buttons that are there. And right now, users are unable to install PianoCam independently because for that first time installation, it does take about an hour of me routing wires underneath the piano and stuff. So right now I actually hand make all of the units and I go to people's locations to set them up, kind of like a piano tuner comes to do maintenance on your instrument. And another kind of smaller problem has been compression within Zoom. But I have found that the compression within Zoom, both of audio and video, hasn't been significant enough to limit musical communication. So this comes to how can it be used not only in a commercial setting, but in a research setting? And so this past semester, I wanted to look at, well, I have PianoCam working. I know I can make recordings in it, but how do they operate when I have two of them linked together? And how does that impact learning behavior and experience in online lessons? And so I had 11 piano students, all college age from CMU, and they all learned the same Chopin piece and a pedal technique called surgical shift pedal that all of them were unfamiliar with. And they did this over a week of virtual lessons with CMU professor Frederic Chiu. And so surgical shift pedal, I won't get like super technical with piano technique terms, but essentially it requires use of both feet simultaneously using two of the three pedals that are underneath the piano. And so there's a lot of visual information and coordination that has to be taught the first time. And so I wanted to see, depending on the technology that was used in the Zoom lesson, would that impact the learning experiences with such an unfamiliar skill? And so I had half of the students use just an iPad in Zoom lessons, and the other half were using PianoCam with their teacher. And so ultimately, I was looking at how does audiovisual clarity impact these learning experiences in virtual music environments, starting at an advanced level of proficiency. So these sessions went over 5 days, over about a week. And so the students were able to do 3 playing sessions, a preliminary, a practice, and a final, and then 2 sessions where they were actually one-on-one with Professor Chiu. And during this time, they also completed surveys on their experience in the lessons and how the technology was either helping or hindering them. So this looks kind of hieroglyphic, but don't worry. This is kind of a more expanded signal diagram of what was going on between these two setups. So the top screenshot that you see here is of the control group and how they were using the technology. So in the first room, I had the teacher with their piano, and in the second room, which was like pretty down the hallway within CFA, so they couldn't hear each other, I had the student. In both rooms, there was an iPad, and just like a basic Zoom meeting, this iPad had an internal camera and microphone that was being broadcast to the Zoom meeting, and then they were seeing themselves on the iPad screen. And so they were really limited in the audiovisual information that they could adjust to see both the hands and feet. Comparatively, we also have the PianoCam setup. And so this is where both the teacher and the student were using PianoCam. And so you can clearly see that they had a far more kind of varied presentation of information that they could use. And so they had up to 3 microphones and then the 3 camera view. All of these went into the video switcher, which combined, this is where I have blue being audio, red being video, and then purple being both of them. This went into the video switcher, and then they were able to connect their laptop or iPad. And then in either on their laptop screen or on a dedicated monitor, they were able to see and hear the other participant. So this is what the iPad lesson looked like. As you can see, well, you can't see actually. The key area is pretty cut off. You can't see like the pedals at all. And the teacher has to really like crank and turn around to see the student. And the participants were allowed to adjust their camera angle, but only within the period of the lesson. And so this resulted in a lot of students needing more time and crossing over into like the second lesson and not learning as quickly because the iPad just wasn't able to capture an accurate representation of what they were doing. We also found that the iPad students and the teacher were less confident in if they were actually communicating effectively. The teacher referred to a lot more concepts using just like visual demonstration with his hands. And the students sometimes got it, sometimes didn't, but really commented on not being sure if they were actually understanding because they weren't able to confirm with one another. Now, in a PianoCam lesson, it's a completely different ball game. So the student here is on the left three panels, and the teacher is on the right three. It's kind of split down the middle. And so you can see that tri-camera view really provides access and zoomed in detail of every part of the student that's moving. And then the teacher was able to demonstrate just as equally. And so what we found was that all of the PianoCam students were able to use the pedal technique when they were being recorded in their last lesson, but only 40% of the iPad students were able to use it successfully. Of that 60% that had problems, there was one student that was able to use, or he attempted to try and use the pedal technique, but misunderstood the coordination that was involved in it. And then the other students completely forgot to use it at all. And so it really showed the effectiveness, at least in this context, of actually like conveying information. And the most important thing was that between the iPad and the PianoCam groups, the student experience over that week was drastically different. And so the iPad students most of them had a somewhat negative or neutral experience, with very few of them showing that they enjoyed their time learning on an iPad. And in comparison, the PianoCam students had a much more positive experience. And so the next video is a sample of one of the PianoCam participants. So he learned with PianoCam the whole week, and you'll be able to see him use both of the pedals at the same time. Yeah. So what's the potential value creation in all of this? Well, from a commercial perspective, the biggest positive is student retention. Coming from Canada when I came here for my master's, I had a pretty sizable studio of private students. And I asked them, I said, hey, would you like to do Zoom lessons? And we all had a horrible iPad Zoom experience during COVID. And most of them, all except one, said, no, we're not interested because it just wasn't worth trying to learn, but having the technology be such an invasive and frustrating element in a lesson. And because I come from a remote area, like in Northern Ontario, these students really didn't have a replacement once I left. And so two of my students actually weren't able to continue learning piano. And that was a really unfortunate effect of me going for extra training down in the States, which is a very common thing among musicians, especially at a higher level. professional musicians are either traveling full-time to perform or they're going to get an international education. And so PianoCam really helps with the maintenance of these musical relationships. And so my goal with it is that if I had my students back then, I could offer them a PianoCam lesson as a solution that's a bit less disruptive than fully going on to Zoom blind or not having lessons at all. And so this supports income stability for educators, especially because musicians are often freelancers. It's really important that they're able to have a consistent roster of students to rely on for employment. And this is going to empower piano players to record and perform independently. The ease of access to be able to record with better visuals and better audio should be something that comes naturally to musicians because it is an essential skill now to be able to market yourself online. And then a future application of this is that PianoCam is constantly recording the user from pretty standard angles that don't change. And so this audio-visual data can be used for performance metrics to increase that communication between a teacher and a student during the week. So for example, if a student recorded their practice sessions with PianoCam, but they were on their phone a lot, like there could be software that would tell the teacher, hey, of this time, and it would tell the student, in an hour, you actually only touched the piano for about 35 minutes. How about we look at why that happened? And then another application is injury detection software. And so with this, I want to use like machine learning software that's able to, for example, detect if somebody has an improper wrist angle. And so instead of it being like an AI tutor that completely eliminates the teacher, I want PianoCam to support the teacher's instructions during the week. And so if it detects that a student is going against the instructions that were set in a lesson, it could signal to the student and say, hey, why don't we look back at this timestamp from last week? And so it really helps to reinforce what the teacher is saying and create a much more engaging experience, both in the lesson and outside of it. So you can check out more at pianocam.ca. You have to put in the www first if it's your first time watch or like accessing the website. It's the mystery of this website. And then you can also email me at my Andrew ID or admin@pianocam.ca. And before I take questions, I'm just going to show you guys a live kind of connection to PianoCam. Because I am actually, wait, there, I'm right next to a PianoCam. So just give me 1 second. Okay. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or want to know more about the Tepper side of things, the CFA side of things, I'm happy to talk.
So are you in Tepper now?
No, I'm in the practice room studio. This is where the PianoCam is set up, like 5 doors down from Frederic's office. Yeah.
Okay. But you have a similar setup in Tepper building?
It's off campus. So the Project Olympus building is on Henry Street. So it's right off of Craig Street. It's about like a 10-minute walk from Tepper, but it is like a Tepper building. Yeah.
And did they actually buy a piano for you?
No, I had to get like a Amazon keyboard for that area. And my goal with it was to see on like the most base model of a piano, would PianoCam still work? And I went so cheap that the piano didn't turn on at all. So I had to get a new one, but that one is working. Yeah.
So how many students do you have now on PianoCam? Do you have anyone at all?
I haven't been teaching since I got to CMU, but it's very frequently used by students within Professor Chiu's studio. And so right now people use it, if it's not being used for lessons by Frederic, then they use it to record auditions or do trial lessons online. And so there's a lot of students applying for grad school. They'll ask me like, hey, can I come use it? And then they're able to use it in really important interactions with prospective teachers.
I was wondering what stage like the startup is in for you right now. Like, are you actively finding customers and like going around and installing them? Or are you still sort of in the product development stage? Like, what's going on with your business model?
Yeah, I'm kind of in both right now. I've gotten it to the point where it can reliably work in Zoom once it's set up. So the way that it works right now is if I have a prospective customer, we come and I build a custom quote for them. And so depending on their instrument and the level of lessons that they're looking to do, I'm able to swap out different microphones and cameras to meet their price point. And so then I physically come and I go install it for the first time. Yeah. So I have 2 installations that are coming up. Yeah, but it's not at the point where I can send out a kit to people and have them fully and independently set it up. But that's the goal. Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, Evelyn. This is Nick Vlahakis. I think the best recording I made was under direction from Ricardo in my home studio. He guided me through it using 2 condenser mics, the stereo mics, over the strings. And you mentioned in your value creation slide that you showed, recording was one feature you showed that this system could use. I don't know, Ricardo maybe chime in on this, but it seems to me you might get a better quality using that method for miking that instead of the single mic out where you put it. I don't know. That's a thought.
Yeah, it's come down to cost right now. I've used
Ricardo didn't care about the cost. He didn't tell me anything about the cost.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Because I've used 2 stereo or like a stereo pair of mics in that way. But they were like $30 mics just to kind of see if they would work. Once or if I get more funding, then getting another one of those AMD condenser mics and having it on the other side of the piano would be really nice. Yeah.
So I guess we agree. I guess you're saying
I
you've
totally
already
agree.
gone through it more of a budgetary discussion. Last question I have is, you mentioned IDA, or was that the acronym IDA?
Yeah, IDA. So ID.
It's science and art.
Yeah, I think, what does it stand for? It's like integrative design of like engineering, arts, and technology.
And there's a group of that. I guess I should know this, but I don't. Where are they housed? Where are those people?
They're in the Hunt Library basement. So they do a bunch of classes from like game design to sound production, and then 3D printing. Let me put the ID8 website in the chat. Yeah, because they do classes, but then they also just have general resources, and you can borrow recording equipment if you need. And they've been really, really helpful in getting this started. Yeah.
Nick, just to jump in, that program was started about 10 years ago or so, maybe 12, by Thanasis, who was here, was assistant provost. And it's an arts and technology combined kind of program, but it covers all areas of arts and and technology too. So there's some courses on basic programming for the art school people, and doing doing innovative learning electronics and some things like that as well for doing that too. They also have a maker space at the basement of Hunt Library, and Jesse Stiles' studio for his surround stuff was also in the basement of Hunt Library when he was here.
So they're not in CFA.
They're not specifically in CFA, but there are CFA people helping teach the classes, as well as engineering people as well too.
Yeah, I'd like to learn more about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I see a question from Arushi. So how can this be leveraged for social media, and would there be an option for a portrait mode? So for the first part of it, I can't get a way to like connect it to a phone right now if you wanted to like record directly into like Instagram or Snapchat. If you had the app on an iPad and you were using certain models of an iPad Pro, then you could do it like that. But you're right, there are a lot of poor quality piano recordings online. There is the option for a portrait mode in terms of if you wanted like a single camera view. That's an option that's adjustable in PianoCam right now. But yeah, in the future it'd be really cool to have like an editing app, because once a Zoom recording is made with PianoCam, it's not necessarily intuitive for musicians on how to like export that file. So yeah, there's definitely room for software that can accompany this. Yeah.
So how was it, Evelyn, working with whoever you work with to help you with the, negotiate, I don't know, a contract or set up a business? How are those pieces of advice and support helpful?
It's been pivotal in me being able to have like the right business strategy for me. Especially because a lot of this is kind of novel, but the path to protecting it on a copyright level is very expensive, and I'm not at like the venture capital raising fund or stage at anything right now. And so within Project Olympus, I've been assigned, they call it like an entrepreneur in residence. And so I work with Matt Spettel, who runs like a fitness app, but he also has an interest in piano. And so he reached out to me, and I meet with him once every like 2 or 3 months to discuss my business strategy. And I'm in a bit of a unique situation because I'm an international student. And I'm only here definitively until May, and so they've been really helpful in determining how much I establish here in the States. Oh, cool. Yeah, train well. And so yeah, between what I establish in the States and Canada and the timeline for that. Another good resource, even if you're not affiliated with Project Olympus, is the PIT. I think it's the Start Smart Legal series. And they're starting that up in like February. Let me see if I can find a link for that. And those are legal sessions that are set up by lawyers, but you get to meet with them for free. And then they also assign you a law student that helps you draft up, like if you have an incorporation contract and you're trying to figure out how do you kind of slice up the ownership pie for multiple owners and co-founders. They're really helpful for that.
I have one more question, Evelyn. Is there any value in integrating or using a disc clavier in anything that would like, because it puts out MIDI. I've used that quite a bit on a disc clavier. Have you used it, or is there any value to that, or is it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. Because like my teacher, Frederic, is a super big supporter of the disc clavier. So we have one in the studio. And we used to do disc clavier lessons quite a lot because he doesn't live in Pittsburgh. And so if we needed like remote contact, that definitely solved the like audio issue. And if you don't know, a disc clavier is an acoustic piano that can also play back MIDI on like a full-sized acoustic instrument. And so in a disc clavier lesson, my teacher would be somewhere else, like in Connecticut, and pair his disc clavier instrument with the one in the studio. So if he played something, the keys would literally start to like move on their own, and the sound would be generated from my instrument.
It moves the pedals too.
It does move the pedals, yeah, and it can
cool.
play. Yeah, no, it's really cool because it can play back things, and you can change the speed, and it's a
But
super.
you have disc claviers at CMU. I know that.
We do, yeah.
I don't know how many, but
I know we have the one in the studio, and so that's actually where one of the PianoCams is installed. Because Frederic found that even in disc clavier sessions, you still had to work with Zoom, and so Zoom was creating audio issues, and you couldn't see everything of like the person actually playing. So he's been using PianoCam with disc clavier, and it's helped a lot.
oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Ask you that. I think this project is really interesting. Like as a pianist who has survived through the Zoom era of learning, but I'm wondering, like, what are you working on now with this product? Like, is there anything you're like improving on, or like issues that you're trying to solve, or specifically right now?
Yeah, the clamp thing was something that I solved like literally the day that like I left for winter break. So that's been a pretty recent one. My goal for this semester is to really refine like the cable management of things. Especially if somebody doesn't have a full-size instrument that I can like hide wires underneath. And so kind of creating like a sleeker look that somebody's not gonna look at and go, oh my gosh, that's confusing. And then also kind of long term, I'm interested in seeing what parts of like the video switcher I could design from scratch, because it's got a lot of, like I mentioned, features on it that are not necessary for PianoCam. Like you can do chroma keying and add a green screen and like newscaster stuff. And so it would really help with like the cost and then also the usability if I had something specifically designed for PianoCam. Yeah, thanks.
Do you want to help out?
Sure.
Yeah, we can get.
I'll think about it. Yeah, this is interesting. Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
That was a great presentation.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this was super great to be back. The last one I did was almost 2 years ago now. And so it's been really rewarding to take it from idea stage to what it is now. So yeah, thanks Ricardo for having me, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you, Evelyn. Okay, we can stop recording, and thanks everyone for being here.